Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Smart Trucking Live. Bit slow out of the gate. We had some technical trouble, but I think we're good now. Hey, Fred, how are you doing? Good to see you. Steve Smith, hello, sir. Matthew Thomas, Garrett Burns. Where's some other guys? Trucker Hershey's here. Asphalt Jungle, Wagner and Sons Trucking, hello. Alan Johnson, Brianna Walsh. Hey, Brianna. Kelly Patterson, did I mention you? Anyway, glad to see you, Kelly. Thanks for joining us all. We've got trucking's going through some turbulent times right now. I thought we'd take a chance maybe to discuss why that is and what's affecting it. What's causing the freight shortage, that type of thing. So I think if you really wanted to start at the top, there are a few different reasons that freight is slow right now. First, we have to acknowledge the fact that the diesel prices are so high. The truth of the matter is that we've lost a whole lot of freight to the rail. So there's one factor affecting us. The ports, which are a major source of freight, are just starting to catch up after COVID. You remember we had major freight shortages out of China for the port trucks to pull out. Remember back in the news, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago now, there were over 100 ships anchored off of Long Beach in LA waiting to unload, and everybody in China was sick with COVID, so the freight wasn't rolling our direction, but when it did, we couldn't necessarily offload it. The ships were backed up. There was labor trouble at the ports of LA and Long Beach. That contributed to the whole picture, as well as COVID. COVID did some damage, and the way the government mismanaged the COVID pandemic basically turned the economy on its ear. So there are a whole lot of reasons that freight just isn't back to the way it was or the way it should be. Now by segments, the port, for instance, which I said is very important, is just kind of back to the point now where it was before COVID. So that's a good thing to see. Reefer work, oddly enough, is still a little bit quiet. And I used to think of reefer work as being pretty steady, reliable work because people always needed to eat. They always needed food. But oddly enough, people are cutting back, and probably because they spent so much during the pandemic that now they've drained their bank accounts and they're being a little more careful with their spending. So I think that's contributed to it. CDL school in 2 weeks. My timing couldn't be worse. Swade Houston. Oh, it's going to come back. I think your timing's probably fine. I wouldn't worry about it. iOS fan 206. Dave, I think it's a backward ass that I misdrive the truck, I get fired, but if the CEO mismanages the team, they get hefty bonuses. And he's using yellow as an example. And you're so right about that. It's a backwards world. Muppet. I see real freight in the USA stacked 2 containers high, so that's lots of freight and lots of weight. You know what's interesting, what's going on in the ports right now is there's no backhaul freight out of the States. Whether the manufacturing is just too quiet or we're not shipping grain or lumber that way. But what the Chinese are actually doing now are building new containers in China, loading them with their product, shipping them to the States, and rather than haul the containers back empty, they're just selling those new containers for $3,000 a piece because it's cheaper than shipping them back. It's incredible to me. So there's some indication of how the economy or the freight is moving, but pretty scary. Dry freight is pretty much in the toilet, and this time of year, people should be gearing up for Christmas. But again, because the economy's in bad shape and money is tight, they're just not doing it. It's a crazy thing to watch. Wagner and Sons Trucking. Do you think the rates will recover? I do, but they're forecasting right now. They're forecasting into no improvement in the freight situation till at least mid-2024. Now, January, February, March have always been traditionally quiet in trucking for freight, but this year it's below norm, and they're saying that it will extend perhaps as far as June or July. So it's, it's going to be quiet. Fred Besmer, and people are broke and just tapped out. Fred, exactly right. That's exactly what's happening. So the economy is dragging because people aren't spending money. Our government debt is just astronomical, and that slows the economy as well. It's a multifaceted thing. Trucker Hershey, $3,000. I'll take 2. What's that about? Buck Brown. Back then, I actually was a Roadway Express brat out of the South Georgia terminal back then. God, and it's hard to believe all that's gone now, eh? Just part of yellow, and it's just amazing to me that it's gone. But anyway, that's pretty much the situation we find ourselves in with trucking these days. It is not the way it was before COVID, and it seems to be struggling to get back to where it was. Now, there are segments, like I said, that are starting to come back. The container work, apparently, flatbed, God Almighty, flatbed work and oversized stuff doing very well right now. So it depends on the segments. Tanker work, it's holding its own. People always need gasoline, in spite of what the government thinks. But so it's just all over the board. It's hard to call, but the one thing they are saying is it's going to be quiet well into 2024. Dave, I think one way the trucking industry could improve would be the truck stops not let the white Volvos park in the fuel island. Yeah, why is that? And why is it usually white Volvos that are doing that? But yeah. John Bent says, I know times are hard, but the stores near me are packed more than ever. Well, that's a good sign, John. That's good to hear. That's not necessarily the case everywhere else, but I'm glad to hear it's busy down where you are, so that's good. Muppet says it's been quiet in Australia. I usually have an extra day off a week like today. Never been like this before. Now, on the other hand, we were talking to SoCal last week, and he said Forward Air was busy, but Forward Air had purchased basically a huge brokerage called Omni, and now again that whole deal is in question whether it's going to go through. So Forward Air may lose that freight, and maybe they'll slow down too. It's just a myriad of issues going on in trucking right now. And there's Roger. Roger says the status of export here in Phoenix is good. So that's good. Yeah, that's good to hear. Anyway, Roger, I was hoping you'd show up because there's lots going on with the ports, and I wasn't sure what would happen with Long Beach and LA because of this new electric truck mandate they've got for all the guys going in and out of the ports. Roger says freight seems to be steady inbound here in Phoenix. Outbound is steady also, with scrap cardboard, and alfalfa leading the pack. Huh. That is fascinating, eh? What they'll ship. Thousands of miles are shipping scrap cardboard. Muppet says a lot less trucks on the road too, especially at night when the overnight express freights run. That's interesting too. It just seems there's big pockets of freight shortage all over the place, and different types of freight too. Like building materials, for instance, that was a boom. Right now, it's quiet, and I can't speak for the States, but up here, it's because the cost of all that material has gone so high. People just aren't building new houses right now. Huh. Here's iOS. He says he's a reefer hauler and he's not having any shortage of freight. Well, that's good to hear. Reefer always was, pretty steady because, as I say, people needed to eat. There's King Drodes just checking in. Huh. Yeah, Roger. Our Los Angeles yard has well over 100 unused chassis stacked up. So, chassis that ordinarily should be busy. We in Alberta are moving a lot of shacks and oversized. Do you know why? No, but I noticed in the financial reports that oversize is doing well right now. And it's a niche market. Maybe, construction companies are repositioning equipment or something like that. Farm equipment's always moving. Hard to explain. David and Nicole left SoCal 24 years ago. Best decision ever. A lot of people seem to be getting out of there. SoCal Sandman, another example, lives in Indiana, I believe it is now. But yeah, it's not the haven it used to be, is it? Which is, I can understand it. They've peaked, and now people are just starting to get sick of the taxes, and they're leaving. What else do I know? This is something else I wanted to mention too. Is one of the things I always preached was you can get good steady work if you're with a private fleet, and private fleets basically are holding their own. They're running steady when a lot of other areas of trucking are struggling for freight. It's interesting to note too that it must be a serious freight shortage, because the mega carriers are even chopping rates, trying to get freight from one another. So the mega carriers are chopping the rates, even though the operating cost continues to go up, the fuel, the insurance, everything else, the equipment, but they're cutting rates to survive on just a bare minimum. And if there's one thing I do like, it's that there's no overflow freight for load brokers. Load brokers are suffering big time through this, and a lot of them will go under. So make sure that you're not taking load board freight that you're not going to get paid for, because they just disappear into the night after you pull the load.
Daniel Meredith Jr., my friend, coming in with a $20 donation. Thank you very much for that. I'll be joining Dedicated Logistics this Monday as a yard jockey to do some shuttle runs back and forth from Williamsport on I-81 for GM parts for $27 an hour of overtime after 8 hours, off on the weekends and holidays, non-union. Sounds pretty good. Thank you very much for the $20.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you. And that sounds like a good gig. You're lucky to trip into that, so that's good. I'm glad to hear it's going well for you. E. Rivera, my dad and I were teaming with CRST under a lease purchase truck. 2022 was great, but we had to shut down this year in October and go company. Such a bummer. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, man. Just because they weren't feeding the lease trucks, is that why? And you knew you'd get steady work as a company truck? That's my guess anyway, but I'd like to have you tell me why. Oh, here's a good point too. Eric Stevenson said the Panama Canal situation isn't helping us on the East Coast with containers, and predicted to get worse in the coming months, with only 18 vessels going through in February. That's right, and that's a good point. And that canal is way backed up. So yeah, there's another good reason we're having a freight shortage. After 28 years of trucking, I'm now spreading gravel for my county in a dump truck. Hourly pay plus pension. Yeah, David and Nicole, we talked about that last stream, I believe. But yeah, you're into a good gig. I think I'd hang on to that, especially the way things are going. I think there's going to be more money and more work to be made locally than over the road. Edward, probably not for the next 6 months. Usually megas have lots of extra capital to sustain hardships, and that's right. They can afford to chop rates and hang on for a lot longer than the little guys can. We are encouraging 18-year-old military retirees, vets, women, immigrants, and everyone and their mother to get a CDL. The market is oversaturated with CDL holders. But Captain Crunch, this turnover issue is that, so, they pump the guys through these driving schools. They find out what a terrible job it is for the money that these mega carriers are paying them, and they quit. And the mega carriers know they're going to quit. So they just keep generating this business of trying to get new drivers into the business. If they would concentrate on retention and paying them better and treating them better, the mega carriers would not have this problem. The good carriers don't have a big turnover problem. It's the mega carriers that treat their drivers like hell. Those are the guys with the problem. Philosophical CIT. I'd never pull company for a carrier I was leased to that starved me out. Yeah, interesting point of view. Yeah, because, you've trusted them once and they've let you down. Yeah, interesting. Dan Sharp. Sorry I'm late. Western PA has stayed busy with flatbed. What? This thing jumps around. With flatbed freight. Lots of coils out of Pittsburgh and sprinkler tube out of Wheatland. That's good news. Yeah, PA is an industrial state. So when they're busy, that is a good sign. There was always freight in PA. Wolf Train, hey man. As an independent with my own customers, I am busier than I have been in most years. In fact, I've been selling some of my overflow or overstock loads. Wolf Train, I'm glad to hear that. But you've built a good customer base through good customer service and decent rates. So good. I'm glad to hear that. Congratulations. That's where you want to go as a trucker. Roger Penske. Hey there, Nick and Catherine. Good to have you back with Dave. Bozo Circus is on the air. I don't know if he's calling me the Bozo Circus or not. He might be right, though. I know I'm looking at the picture of myself in the screen here, and that's what it looks like, so no wonder.
Oh, thank you for that.
Who are the good carriers? Starting with a CDL later this month. Kyle, we've got a whole page on our website about who the good carriers are going to be to pull for this year.
I will put it in the chat.
We'll put. Kathy says she's going to put that in the chat. So right now she'll answer your question. Good question too. It's important to work for the good carriers. There's too many crappy ones out there. So I'm glad to hear some of you guys are doing all right. Like they're talking about the freight shortage, but more than a few of you have mentioned that you're doing just fine, and I'm glad to hear that. I long for the trucking days of yesteryear, jaw-jacking on the CB, drivers helping each other out. Now nobody helps, and nobody in all cares. Yeah, it is, Dave and Nicole. It's a different trucking world out there now, isn't it? It's completely different than it was 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 years ago. I got lucky with Swift CDL training in that my trainer had actually trained from either the driver's seat or the passenger seat and explained the what and why. Yeah, God, I can't believe the number of untrained driver trainers there are out there. I think that should be illegal. 3 months experience, and you can be a driver trainer at some of these carriers. Talk to Kansas DOD. They provide on-ramps and upgrades to the roads for shippers and receivers. The taxpayers pay for it. Yeah, but you can't park there. Never trust the best fleets to drive for. Those titles are bought and paid for. That's the ones that are published by the ATA that Wagner and Sons is referring to. That's not our list. But yeah, you're so right. The ATA carriers buy their titles. Just took a load of insulation 450 miles for $1,917, $4.25 a mile. I'm company, but my 27% still worked out to $1.15 a mile for me. As a company driver, that's pretty damn good. Dave, I miss the professionalism when companies and drivers cared and trucks were good. Yes, we all do that. It's sad to think that the new guys coming into the industry won't really appreciate how good the industry could be and was at one time. So yeah, it's a loss. I don't think it's coming back, but for those of us that are old enough to remember that, those were the good times. I guess if you're a NASCAR hauler, you get paid pretty well. Yes, I had a friend that did that, and the money was very good. I think those guys do very well. Rush schedules, though. I remember the guys that I knew complaining about, sometimes the scheduling was not in agreement with their hours of service. There was a CRST trainee who assaulted another driver on Bonehead Truckers, who told him he needs to move. Yeah. CRST has a terrible reputation, and their driver trainers have a terrible reputation. It's terrible, the two-way radio nowadays. They only talk abuse, and everyone or maybe someone will say something if there's danger ahead. Yeah, the CB radio's turned into a real trash-talking place there, so it's another loss. It was a useful tool for us, and now you can barely just run it on low and hope to pick up something valuable. Otherwise, it's just trash. Excuse me. Dave Gorb says, Dave Nicole, I'd like to see those CB days too. Dale Earnhardt Sr. was the best. Man, that's been a few years since he's been gone now when you think about it. One good thing nowadays in trucking is the trucks are comfortable. Ugly but comfortable. Miss a KW with a Cummins KT800 flattening through the hills. The old KTA series Cummins were amazing engines, and those were the best engines in my opinion that Cummins made. The first of the big cam series was pretty good, and then they went to the 444 and then the red motors, and I haven't liked them ever since. But man, back in the day, those KTA motors were really good. Not great for fuel, but a reliable engine. Strong, reliable engine. Where's the Lettuce King been lately? Is he still driving truck? Yes, he is. He's hauling float truck down in the city, moving construction equipment and paving equipment, doing very well, making a lot of money. Doesn't particularly like the job, but he sure likes the paycheck. He just winterized his big 351 Pete there a couple of weeks ago, so he's got it all put away for the winter. But I'm due to give him a call. I'm a little behind, but yes, he communicates with Kathy more than he talks to me. But yeah, he's been doing well. Why does everyone make fun of Swift? Is it because the training is bad? Well, Brianna, apparently the training must be bad because Swift has a lot of visible screw-ups and a lot of crashes. And truck drivers see so many Swift trucks doing goofy things. That's how that reputation has developed. They've managed to earn it. Now, mind you, there's a ton of Swift trucks on the road, so the odds of seeing a Swift truck in trouble are improved by that. But basically, yeah, Swift training must not be up to very much because they seem to do stupid moves and get themselves in trouble all the time. Dave, I missed the trucks with the Cat engines. Yeah, made trucks. I've still got my Cat engine. That was one of my decisions not to replace that truck when it came time because I didn't want a red motor. So yeah, no, I think Cat made the best truck engines there were in the last number of years. Nevada Maverick. How do they stay in business that they have so many accidents and incidents? Swift will be self-insured. So basically, their insurance company isn't going to shut them down. They just make so much money that they eat the losses. Like Swift financially does very well. It's very well run. They save money on training and they just financially absorb the losses.
Okay, get back on track.
So back to the freight recession. We are seeing signs that is starting to turn around. But as I say, they're not predicting a big breakthrough in the freight recession till maybe May or June of 2024. Are any of you other out there experiencing the freight shortage? Well, maybe that was part of why the CRST fellow had to go to the company truck. Maybe that was part of the problem, because the big carriers are suffering from this freight shortage, and that's why we're hearing about it. The smaller and medium-sized carriers, I don't think are suffering quite so badly. Everyone's hurting a little, but I think it's the big guys that are really hurting. Is what we should do for the next generation. Next generation is wanting more electric self-driving trucks versus the current generation, who prefer hard-working trucks and will always be reliable. Daniel, your guess is as good as mine. I think the electric trucks have an awful long way to come. There are all sorts of issues with them. The new Mercedes truck, the electric truck that they've come out with, they boast a 300-mile range, but you're only supposed to charge the battery to 80%. So if you charge the battery to 80%, what's the real range? 250 miles. So, that's not too far for a truck to have to travel before it's got to find a recharging station. They're not there yet. I was on rural JB Hunt, dedicated for 2 weeks, no issues, then sent to take a Smith driving test in a pickup truck in an urban area. They failed me, said I would get to retest, but fired me the next day. JB Hunt. Jesus. Well, JB Hunt makes good money, but I sure don't agree with a lot of the things that they do. There's an example of it right there. Trucker Hershey, why terminated at GP Transco? Who terminated at GP? Not us. We're still in their good books. There's a USA truck video that's hard to watch. He destroyed the truck doing a U-turn. I know this video. In front of a low bridge. He fell victim to training pressure and tunnel vision for a solution. I saw that video, Kelly, and I think basically the guy probably just couldn't back up. So he just figured his only choice was to try to do a U-turn, and you saw the results of that. That's one of my favorite truck wreck videos. It's incredible. Yep. So I haven't heard anything back on anybody else that is suffering through slow freight. So that's, perhaps it's better than what we're hearing. But again, like right now, trucking should be busy as everything gears up for Christmas. And it's not. And it's somebody commented the other day that I was listening to that said, even coming into American Thanksgiving, when food transportation should be booming, there should be a lot of extra reefer work right now as people buy turkeys and that type of thing. And even that for the Thanksgiving weekend isn't really happening. So it's a sobering declaration on what's going on in trucking and what's going on in the economy. And if, as Fred Besmer says, if people don't have the money, and they just can't be buying the stuff. So, that's the long and the short of it. The government's got to, they don't want to admit that they're in recession, but when we look at the freight shortages in trucking and what's going on at the ports, the freight's moving one way, we can see that there's a recession, and that affects trucking. A lot of family trucking businesses are getting tanked. Seems to be quitting or filing for bankruptcy. That's because the smaller trucking companies just don't have the financial resources to be able to hang on and hang on and hang on forever when the freight doesn't pay what it costs to operate the truck. And that's happening. And that's happening a lot. The freight rate is too low, the cost, like the fuel, too high, the equipment's too high. Little trucking companies can't hang on forever. Roger, I got an offer from JB Hunter Intermodal here in Phoenix. They don't want to pay by the hour, so I declined. Who in their right mind wants to run around the state of Arizona for mileage and stop pay? Yeah, well, smart on you, Roger. Yeah. Trucking should all pay by the hour these days. The amount of time you lose in traffic and at shippers and receivers and scales and that type of thing, it should all be by the hour, truly. And that's pretty much what I like about the local trucking these days, like what Roger's doing here, because if it pays by the mile, you're not getting paid for all your time. Or if it doesn't pay by the mile, you're not getting paid for all your time. So I think the answer to this freight recession is going to be, if you're not with a good carrier, if you're thinking about switching carriers because you're not making the money, I think the answer is going to be in more local work, more short haul stuff that gets you home every night. Just because the over the road stuff isn't paying very well right now, especially if you're like an independent or you're working on percentage or something like that. The money's not there, so you're almost better to do dump truck work close to home for the county, as Dave and Nicole are doing, for instance, because at least you're guaranteed a job and you're guaranteed a good wage until this freight recession ends. And then if things turn around after June of next year, you can start to look at it again if you want. Yeah, driving for my county, for example, the government pays for having a medical card. That's Dave and Nicole again. That are working for the county. So there's a lot to be said for that right now, especially in a freight market like this. Muppet. Do you think half of these new drivers could reverse a car box trailer? Hell, I'm not sure I could back one of those things up. SWIFT stands for Should Wish I Finished Training. I just got an offer doing local salary work, $1,400 a week, in stuck of pulling junk trailers for a local pallet company. Well, be careful that the DOT doesn't stop you with one of those junk trailers, because that may affect the points on your license. So be careful with that. It's good money, but be careful. Make sure it'll pass the safety check before you leave the yard. Trucker Hershey. I do local work Monday to Friday now, 8 to 4. Yeah, a banker's hour job. And these days in trucking, that's not a bad way to go. Everyone only buys what they need these days because every dollar is scarce. And that's right. People are not buying the luxury items. They're buying the basic necessities to survive because their paychecks aren't going far enough to allow them the extras. And that's part of why the freight's slow. People aren't buying the extra stuff. Is there a truck driver shortage? Brianna, for the mega carriers, there's always a truck driver shortage because they have such a huge turnover. For the really good carriers, they don't suffer from a truck driver shortage. They pay their people well, treat them well, and they've always got their people there. People stay at those carriers years and years and years. So no, not for the good carriers. Kelly, the company I work for is West Coast based and paid by the mile, but when you get into the large cities like LA, they switch to hourly and use ELD as a time card. That's good. That's good to hear. I like that. At least they're trying to pay you fairly when you get into those big cities. I like that. Nova Line's flatbed offering $7,000 a week gross. Well, that's pretty good. And like I say, flatbed is doing all right these days, in spite of everything. So that's good to know. Overweight, etc. A lot. DOT laws, I'm exempt. Oh, for the county, he's exempt. Sheriff looks the other way, my county pays their salaries. So the county trucks can't get an overweight ticket. Oh, I like that. Will they ever ban old trucks? Jara. There will be a faction of the industry that tries very hard to do that. Whether they'll actually get away with it, I don't know, because so much of trucking relies on single operators that run their own truck and just can't afford $200,000 to $300,000 for a new truck. Daniel, I feel like when I was over the road, it was hard to get out of California. Easy to get in, but hard to get out. Dispatch was always trying to make short runs in California, but you couldn't make money. Yeah, Dan, it's tough getting freight outbound out of California. That was the one nice thing I liked about produce. You could always get produce out of California. But I know my friends in flatbed had a heck of a time getting good loads out of California. They'd run thousands of miles empty sometimes to get out of there. Like literally run into Texas, for instance, to find a load. Is there a minimum mile or hourly rate in the USA, Canada? Well, basically they try to get away with as cheap as they can. We found out that Pam Transport out of Arkansas is paying 38 cents a mile, which is unheard of. Like, you can't even survive on that. But I guess, there's the bottom rung right there. The guys at GP Transco though are making 85 to 95,000 a year. So there's the top rate. How is the Ice Road Trucking going since they ended that show on Ice Road Truckers? I couldn't stand to watch that show. It was so fake. But right now, Biden has opened up a whole bunch of land leases up in Alaska, and they are looking for truck drivers up in Alaska, and some of those guys will make big money this winter. Dave, did you know a bull hauler in YouTube video dead-handed 1,200 miles? Yeah, I can easily believe that. Those cattle pots, you got to clean them out. They're really only good for stack and dry freight in them. So I'm sure they struggle for backhaul freight, plus the time involved. Like a lot of those guys, once they're empty, they're needed back at the farm to pick up the next load of cows. So a lot of the times it's just more expedient for them to rush right back and pick up another load and then go again, rather than waste their time looking for a cheap backhaul. Oh, Western Express, 28 cents per mile. That's from Trucker Hershey. Yeah, God, I thought Pam was bad. That's incredible. Dave and Nicole, where I lived in SoCal, loved hauling produce from Bakersfield, Salinas, and Watsonville. That's an awful lot of what I did, and I really enjoyed that work. And I was bringing it back to Canada, but I loved working in California and loading produce in those areas. I never had to load in LA. I was always out in Salinas or someplace. A lot of Salinas. Well, I think the freight will pick up in some segments in the next couple coming months. I don't think dry freight will necessarily improve, but I think we're going to see reefer freight pick up a little more, and maybe not so much the frozen stuff, but whatever people are eating is what will increase. And as we get closer to Christmas, hopefully there'll be more of a demand for stuff that trucks can haul. So that's what I see anyway. But I should emphasize just how much the rail is hurting trucking right now. That one rail line that they put in from Kansas City down into Mexico, they estimate that will take 60,000 truckloads off the highway this year. That's a heck of a lot of loads. That's a chunk, boy. So we are losing freight to the rail. The rail is cheaper. They can haul more weight per load. So we're losing a lot to the rail. Philosophical CIT. 28 cents a mile isn't bad when you've got 3 DUIs and 4 felonies. The typical Western Express driver. I was saying something like that to Kathy earlier today. Western Express flatbed makes like $700 a week, and you're tarping and tying the loads down. That's That's pathetic. Do I remember the Aero trucking story? Very well. Do I remember that? That was just a matter of, the new CEO, who is the son of the original guy, cleaning out the bank account and living the luxurious lifestyle. He didn't care about the drivers, whether he could pay them or not. He just wanted all that cash for himself. He was buying Ferraris and mansions, and there wasn't enough left to pay the drivers. But after he cleaned out the bank account, he didn't care, and he left. They were a fair-sized fleet. They left drivers stranded all over the country, cut off their fuel cards, no way to get home. He's in court, or has been in court over that. They've taken him to task. I hope they throw him in the can. Kelly Patterson. Dang, the sharecroppers in the 1870s got a better deal than Western Express is doing. Yeah. Do I think that this year is going to be a good year for owner-operators? Brianne, I'm nervous for owner-operators right now because the freight volume isn't there. There are too many guys, too many trucks on the road, frankly. So, no, I'm worried for owner-operators this year. I think, if you're with a really good carrier, you might be fine. But an awful lot of them could find themselves in a tough pickle if their carriers can't find the freight. And a lot of those carriers, it's sad to say, a lot of those carriers rely on load brokers for some of that freight, and the load brokers are starving right now. So that will in turn affect some of these cheaper carriers, and some of those owner-operators are going to be in trouble. They're going to suffer for it. Yeah, 1,200 tractors, 1,400 trailers, and he was thrown in the can. Yeah. Aero. We're talking about Aero here, so yeah, they were a fair size. Did you know TikTok truck drivers think it's a joke? I don't even go on TikTok. I don't know what the hell that is. I've been driving for about 4 months. The job paid 65 cents per mile with easy to make $200 a week in bonuses. Well, that's all right, though. Boy, you don't see bonuses much anymore in trucking.
All right, not a bad account. Thank you very much for the $2. We're going to keep it on Stream Topic today. Daniel Meredith Jr. with the $5. Thank you very much for that. Thoughts on Cooper Transportation trying to buy Yellow/YRC and hopes to get 32K union employee jobs back. Want it to happen, but I won't go back. Thank you very much, both of you, for the donations.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you for the donation. It's an interesting thing with Cooper here, and I guess basically what they're after is the real estate and the equipment, to sum it all up. But then you'll wonder what they're going to do for freight, because so much of that freight has left Yellow, and a lot of it went to Saia, for instance. They're saying Saia picked up the majority of Yellow's freight now. But yeah, I gather that's just for the real estate and the equipment. You know what? Yellow had a ton of really good real estate. They could probably just flip the real estate and make their money back, and make some on the equipment too. I'm not sure what Cooper Transport intends to do with that stuff. It'd be interesting to find out. We'll have to keep an eye on them. Van Hunter, my dad worked for International. He said the more efficient you tried to make a semi, the more it started to look like a train. That said, how do you feel about the larger semis? Van, to be honest, they all look the same to me now. I understand what your dad's saying. They just, they've all got the drop nose thing going on and the short wheelbase thing, and a lot of them are doing the super singles. They all look the same, and to me that's not appealing. I liked the older trucks that look like trucks. I don't particularly care for the new trucks, and I personally believe too that that's part of the reason some of these carriers have trouble attracting drivers. If the pay isn't really high, if the pay is just medium, sometimes a guy would go to work there because they had great looking equipment. But boy, that doesn't happen anymore.
Not a band coming in with another $2. Thoughts on AI trucks saving and improving lives?
Boy, they've got a long way. Good question. They got a long way to go there. I see that Elon Musk just won his first lawsuit about his Tesla cars causing a crash, and basically they weren't able to prove that the driver had put the car in auto mode. But you know that they've got so far to go. These autonomous trucks are still making so many mistakes. They can't run in bad weather, for instance. Long way to go. Can you answer a question regarding owner-operators? My company tells me I get 80% of the load. Do brokers take more than 20% and not tell the owner-operator what the real rate is? Sometimes they do that consistently. That's one of the biggest problems with load brokers is that they rarely give you an honest rate. They take as much as they possibly can off the rate because that's their job. That's what they're getting paid to do. That's how they make their money. So they skim the truck as much as they possibly can. Their goal, their job is to make the truck go for as little as possible, for as little money as possible. So yes, you don't want to deal with load brokers unless you absolutely have to, because you can't trust them as far as you can throw them. And then now they've got this move by the FMCSA trying to go towards load broker transparency, and we've been hearing that since 2019 when Donald Trump was in Washington. And Load Brokers Association is kicking and screaming. They don't want to show what they're really making on the loads, and that's the reason for that too. They don't want to reveal how much money they're making. My opinion, the reason why trucking paid so good is because it can be a difficult, stressful job. It certainly can be. And if it's going to pay the same as working in a factory, most people will just stay in the factory, Aline. And that's exactly right. Like, who wants to sign up for a 70-hour work week when you put in all that time and still come home as with the same money as a factory worker at Goodyear Tire or something like that? And people look at that and go, 8 hours a day versus 12 hours a day, it's not much of a calculation. Trucking does not appeal to people anymore the way it used to, and that's one of the big reasons. What could the 2024 elections mean for trucking in North America? Well, in my opinion, if Trump wins, it will be a boon to trucking. And if Biden wins, it'll stay the way it is. Yeah, FMCSA put broker transparency on the back burner until 2024. But you know what? They're willing to bring in speed limiters this year, but they still don't want to talk about broker transparency, and that's been going on for years. And they just keep shoving it to the back burner. What made you quit trucking in the trucking industry? Why didn't you keep driving for longer? Well, my equipment, I ran California, and my equipment became outdated according to their emissions equipment. So I was looking at buying a new truck and a new reefer trailer, and the cost of that, with the fuel going up and the freight rate, the dry freight rate going down, because I had to haul dry freight out to California, it just didn't work out financially for me anymore. I was in my early 60s, and I didn't want to invest another $350,000 in a new truck and trailer when I looked at the cost of fuel and where the freight rates were going. So I just decided to bow out. And I ran locally here for a little while, and quite like that. Got paid by the hour. That was a good job too, but there was a lot of carrying lumber in that, and finally my body just couldn't take it anymore, and that was why I retired. I miss the trucking, but I don't miss all the bull crap involved with it.
Ben, thank you for another $2. Can unions in the U.S. make a comeback?
That's a good question, and thank you for the donation. And yes, I believe they can make a comeback. When things are this tight and driver wages are not keeping up with the cost of living, and they're not right now. And that's why all these unions are striking, because the cost of living has gone up. So the union guys are getting raises because of that. The non-union guys are not getting raises. So I think there's a real argument here for guys that want to unionize, because the unionized drivers will keep up with the cost of living much more easily than the non-unionized guys. I think you'll see a lot more of that in the future here. Good question. Justin, good evening from warm and sunny Georgia. We had our first snowfall here yesterday, so I'm a little bit envious there, Justin. Most young people don't want hands-on blue-collar jobs. They want office jobs that pay six figures. So trucking is doomed. Yeah, Young people these days want to work in offices. So that's another. There's no interest in trucking anymore from this next generation. What, Brianna? Are reefer trailers hard to operate? Brianna, God, no. All you've got to do is be conscientious about it. The computer on the reefer unit takes care of everything. So all you've really got to do is monitor that the reefer is working properly, which is easy to do, and double check with a probe into the back door of the trailer to make sure that the reefer unit is telling you the truth about the temperature in the trailer. So you've just got to be conscientious to check your load. Don't let the reefer run out of fuel, because that's a problem. They're hard to restart once they've run dry on diesel. And no, reefer work is good work. I enjoyed reefer work, and it's not difficult. It just takes a conscientious operator. What do I think about the Peterbilt 589? Worst truck they ever... Yeah, I don't care for it at all. And I was really ticked off that this 589 had a rounded windshield. And I did a short on that. That's just, flat glass is so easy to come by. A driver can replace it in his driveway. These new curved windshields have to come from Peterbilt, and they're a fortune. And you can't tell me they're making a whole lot of difference on the fuel mileage. So, no, I am not a fan of the new Pete. It's too bad, but, that's just what they've decided to do. How can we spread unionization to other vital sectors in the U.S. economy? I think it's just going to have to come naturally. I'm struggling to think of other areas of trucking that are suffering with this freight shortage right now. We're back to that. And tanker work. One area of tanker work that is suffering, believe it or not, is the chemical tanker business. And I did that for a little while. But the EPA has come up with so many new restrictions on the chemicals that the public can buy and industry can buy, that an official at Imperial Oil told me that they're getting out of the business of chemical liquid manufacturing because the EPA is putting a squeeze on it. So food grade tankers, for instance, are still working at a steady rate, but the chemical tanker divisions are slowing down because of these new EPA standards for everything from soap to detergents to all sorts of stuff. Yeah, brother, I'm in the UK, only 59 years old, still young. But I'm a company driver because I had a 1 million mile truck ready to replace and thought the market is too uncertain. I'm out. No, Tyke, I can respect your decision. I was kind of in the same boat. It's a lot of money to invest for an uncertain future. So yeah, safer to company.
All right, Chad, it's getting to be that time of night again. We'll do a couple more minutes of questions here, and then we'll wrap it up for the night.
Are California regulations prohibitive to trucking, or is that just right-wing propaganda? No, they're definitely prohibitive to trucking. California is getting to be a tough state to operate in. It was always a tough state because of the traffic and stuff, and the scales were pretty stringent and stuff. But these emissions requirements that they're imposing on commercial trucks are just ridiculous. They're out of this world, and that is going to kill trucking in California. And they just can't see the forest for the trees. Their main export industry is produce, and now nobody wants to buy a new emission-friendly truck to go in there just because they're not reliable and they're really expensive. Part of being a professional trucker is knowing what you know best, doing what you do best. Reefer for a couple of years, and I could not handle the hours. It was an accident looking for a place to happen. Excuse me. And Kelly, because of the ELDs, they've had to rearrange a lot of reefer work. Like this, frankly, that was one of the problems too. When the ELDs came in for a guy like me, there was no way you could meet the produce house schedule with an ELD, and it was the same for everybody, not just me. So that part of the produce industry out of California, unless you were a team in there, you just couldn't load produce anymore and do long distance. And so the hours now for reefer work are more sane because of the ELD, but you don't get long haul produce loads anymore, for instance. My favorite truck is the Mack Superliner. I wish Josh Super Duty were here to hear you say that. They're a good solid truck. You don't see them much on the highway really anymore. More in the construction industry, but they were a good solid truck. And one of the first trucks I drove was an old Mack, and God, it was a reliable truck. Rough to drive, but a reliable truck. As an owner-operator, you have to do the maintenance on your own truck, right? This is Brianna. You don't have to do it yourself. You can have a shop do it for you. You should do whatever you're capable of doing yourself because it saves money, frankly. Shops are expensive now, Brianna, so you should try to do as much as you can. But no, you can have a shop do some of the major stuff, and frankly, you want to have a shop do some of the major stuff because you can't afford to be down for 2 weeks fixing it yourself, put it back together, and then find out it doesn't work right, and then have to take it all apart again. So that's the problem with that. When it comes to the major work, Brianna, I always had a good shop do that work because I just needed the truck to be reliable. You couldn't afford to have it down very long while you worked on it yourself for the bigger things. Always enjoy your streams, Dave. Muppet, thank you for saying so. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's best to learn everything you can when you're on your own. Yeah, with especially in reference to fixing the truck and understanding how the freight moves. Yeah, the more you can do yourself, the more you understand, the better your chances are of making money, and that's what it's all about. Hello from Norway in the snow. I bet you've got more than we do. So it's nice to hear from Norway. Thank you. I see trucks all day for 15 to 20 grand on the marketplace. Now's the time to buy if you can find the work. And the used truck market has softened, and there are deals now because the manufacturers have caught up. So you can still get new trucks now again if you can afford them, but used trucks are on the market and the prices are going down. But yeah, that's the key. Can you find work for them and keep them reliable?
All right, chat, that'll do it for us today. If you have any final thoughts, Dave, now would be the time.
I'd just like to thank everyone for coming today. I'd like to have them check out our website. I'd like to have them subscribe. I appreciate all the donations. I really enjoy talking to everybody. We'll do a chat again this time next week, same time, same place. And I hope to see you there. I enjoy it. I hope you do too.
Yes, thank you to our donators today, Not a Band account, and Daniel Meredith Jr. Thank you, everyone, for the donations. And thank you to you, the viewer, even if you didn't donate today. We appreciate having each and every one of you guys coming out to the chat and interacting with us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Well, I guess that's it for us. Stay safe. Keep the rubber side down. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
And not quite. Daniel Meredith Jr., thank you very much for the $5 donation. Downside to reefers, depending on the company, mileage is good, but if you have a watch out for a trailer, but not get paid good for it after long hours of driving.
Yeah, and Daniel's right. Thank you for the donation, Daniel. Most reefer guys don't have to wash out their own equipment, but yeah, sometimes. And either way, you're getting the bill, I guess, from Blue Beacon. I tried to stay away from that. Most reefer guys only had to wash their trailers out if they were hauling meat loads. Like when you're hauling produce, you just sweep them out at the end of the load. But yeah. You have to wash them if you're hauling meat. So, all sorts of things to learn. Anyway, good night, everybody. Thank you.